the lovely Ben Brainard slid into my DMs and was like, "Hi, I'm putting together some 5e extra content. Do you want to playtest it?" And he put me in a Discord call with everyone I had ever followed.
By the way, you said the written RPG scene. What is that?
Oh, wizards are the best class in D&D, and I could debate for several hours. Like, it's not even close to me.
Hey there! Welcome to the first ever full video episode of The Table Business. I'm your host and the DM of Sounds Like Adventure, Jack Trainer. And we're going to kick off our first video episode with a seriously great guest. We are joined by Maddaloon, aka Maddy. So Maddy is the DM of Dungeons and Demigoods. She's a TTRPG content creator and she's a pro DM. And in today's episode, we're going to dive into how Maddy fell into content creation. She says why she thinks wizards are the best class in D&D and the other options aren't even close. And she gives the best NPC tip that I have ever heard. All right, well, let's get into it. Maddy, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So to start things out, you are a tabletop RPG content creator. You're a Twitch streamer. You're the DM of Dungeons and Demigoods. But for anyone who doesn't know, who is Maddaloon?
You pretty much got me there. Kind of fell into this after making some funny videos for my friends and then ended up accidentally getting into the actual play scheme, and now I'm a professional dungeon master and TTRPG performer and content creator person. But essentially, I both show you how to play D&D, and then if you like D&D, I'll make funny little skit videos that you can watch.
We'll dive into all of that stuff through today's chat as well, but I always like to start these conversations by going back to how it all started for you, basically. So take me back. How did you get into tabletop role-playing games? Think back like the day, what was the weather like? Break it down for me.
Well, can't remember that far, but it was the classic of introduced to it with a bunch of friends from a friend. I took to it a little bit too well. I think everyone was slightly concerned. I just remember the DM coming up to me and being like, "Maddie, look, like, you don't have to like go straight into this if you're a little bit nervous, like it's fine." And it ended with me like selling the party into slavery, then breaking them out and taking the profits to myself or something like that.
Genius.
I had been heavily involved in like the written RPG scene, so the role-playing character creation aspect was easy. It was the rules that I had to get used to. After that, no one else wanted to DM, so I decided to try. I watched like one YouTube video. I was like, yeah, I got this. I didn't, by the way. Again, me and my friends tried to do a podcast. Didn't happen, but I kept making the TikToks and it kept doing well. And eventually, the lovely Ben Brainard, who is an American comedian, slid into my DMs and was like, "Hi, I'm putting together some 5e like extra content. Do you want to play test it?" I was like, "Sure." And he put me in a Discord call with everyone I had ever followed. And then they were like, "Hey, let's do a playtest game." And it was like me, Daisy, Jason from Once Critical Dice. And from there, I was guesting in actual plays and then did my own.
Wow, that off to the races. How long is the time span, I wonder, between you getting into tabletop games and then you going into content creation?
I always tell people that I haven't actually been playing for a very long time, but I've been playing full-time way too much for a very short amount of time. I started 5 or 6 years ago, and then I started making TikToks probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I've been playing at least 2 to 5 times a week for the past 3 years.
Oh my goodness.
So I've played a lot of D&D in a short amount of time.
Jeez, wow. If that Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours thing, if that is real, which I think it isn't, you're going to pass that in like the next few weeks by the sounds
probably.
of things. It's incredible. By the way, you said the written RPG scene. What is that?
Oh, okay, so all of my RPG girlies in the chat, I know who you are, and I know that we're all embarrassed by the things we did in the early 2010s, and I just want to say that I see you and I know you. Essentially, it's just role-playing, but written in third person, and you role-play with a group of people. Some people did it on DeviantArt or Tumblr. I did it on Wattpad, which I think is worse, and then Instagram. And it was fandoms. It was beautiful. It was the cringiest thing you could ever imagine, but it was beautiful. Actually, one of those RPGs inspired Dungeons and Demigods, and some of the people I used to roleplay with watched the show and was like, I can't believe like all of these characters that I remember that you created are in this. Did they have any idea? And I was like, no. And they were like, why would you make this NPC famous? How dare you?
So that's probably a great transition point to talk about Dungeons and Demigods. So can you tell us a little bit about that for anyone who hasn't heard of it before?
Well, it's a 2-season campaign that just finished last week. We had our grand finale. It's a 5e TTRPG inspired by the Percy Jackson books, very much like the all the Greek mythology gays were flocking to it. When I first put out the casting call, the flood of like requests to be in it I got was unfathomable. It was the cast who I'm now very close friends with. These were people I had been watching for years. I did not tell them this until at least 3 months because I was like, I don't want them to think I'm a freak. Yeah, it's essentially Camp Half-Blood as we love it, but what the Camp Half-Blood is in Europe, which is on a floating island, and the Dionysus of this camp, or Mr. D, is actually Circe, the sorceress icon. And it followed the characters being the kids who never went on quests and then went into adulthood. And now they are unfortunately the only ones for the task.
Wow, extremely cool. And you mentioned the cast being people that you were watching for years. Who's in the cast for anyone who's listening and is curious?
We have Kiki Does Stuff, who is a very close friend of mine. She was one of my rocks when I first started. We've been friends for as long as I've had friends. We met in Ben's Discord, so she's been my number one since day one. Also, or Relentless, she was one of the ones I've been watching for a long time. Faye, or Gothic Fairy. Justin, Freddie's roommate, who is incredible. And B, of Ben Does D&D, who is also incredible. And then we had, of course, guest stars and all of that, but they're all incredible little beings, and I call them my 5 muses.
And if anyone's had their interest piqued by this and would like to check it out, where should they go to do so?
All the VODs are on my YouTube. You can check them out. They're all in order. You can put it at 2 times speed. It is very fun, and these players are some of the most phenomenal role players. Sometimes I just sit back with my popcorn and I'm like, wait, we have to keep going. I have plot.
Love that. And not too long ago, you won an award for a Monster Hearts 2 campaign.
The best way to say it is that I directed a film and someone won Best Actress.
Okay.
So, the winner, of course, being the incredible Hannah Plays D&D, who was one of our guests on Dungeons and Demigods. She was phenomenal. But she was a player in my Monster Hearts campaign and won Best Indie Player. She is the one of the best dramatic actresses, and I've casted her in my soon March, I think we're starting, doing my next long-term campaign, which is Chains of Asmodeus, and she is one of the main cast members because I simply had to have her for myself.
And for that award-winning campaign, what is that? Can you tell us for anyone who doesn't know?
If you only play 5e, I totally recommend checking out other TTRPGs. One is Monster Hearts. Monster Hearts 2 is the one we were playing. It's a heavy role-playing based TTRPG that is about the messiness of being a teenager that is then transformed into monster types. And these different monster types represent a very messy part about being a teenager. So it gets very dark. It is very personal. I recommend only playing this type of thing with people that you trust or have very extensive session zeros. It can get really intense. But for example, Diana played a vampire, and her connection was to addiction and not getting out of that cycle. And Hannah, as a werewolf, it was a connection to doping and also SA a little bit, but it was more of an underlying story. Ghost was about the trans experience. Like, it is a gorgeous, gorgeous TTRPG that's all about connections and manipulation and kind of not being able to control yourself in puberty. It's very cool.
And the campaign itself, what was that called? Because was there a sequel recently?
There was, it's called The Nightmare Before Prom Night, was what we called it. It was, we had it during Halloween. It was very fun. It was inspired by this mockumentary called American Vandal. If you know, you know. Season 2 of American Vandal essentially is about like a anonymous internet person who started doing smear campaigns about the popular students and finding all of their secrets. And that's happening while a kid has gone missing, and it's all very spooky, ooky undertones. And then we had a sequel called It's a Wonderful Death, which was Christmas themed instead of Halloween themed, which was about these teenagers now coming into adulthood and how what they previously were doing has kind of become worse or changed in some way.
So you touched on DMing on Start Playing just earlier. And while I was doing my research for this chat, I was taking a look at your Start Playing page and I was reading through your reviews. And one thing jumped out to me again and again, people are praising you for your NPCs. So talk to me a little bit about your philosophy around NPCs. Why do people praise you so much about them?
I think I've been DMing for a long time and I've done both the good and the bad of NPCs and learnt from my mistakes of you have to come between the not making them incredibly boring and not making them DNPCs who are just invading on the story. So usually my one main thing to do is to have them heavily connected to the characters' backstories and make it almost like a collaborative experience between you and the players, because then it's their NPC as well. And they'll want them to be in the story because they involve their backstory and help their character. Also, just making them funny and also making them connective. I think I sometimes will talk about with some of the guys that I know, like how to make women feel comfortable at their table. And my one thing that I always say, because you don't see this a lot in media, is if you are playing a female character or a femme presenting character or have feminine people at your table, give them an NPC that is also a woman, that is not rivaling against them, actually likes them, and they are good friends. Because I find most people immediately, if it's a party that's one girl and a bunch of guys, if a girl comes in, they're immediately rivals and they hate each other. Give them positive female companionship and you'll immediately find all of your feminine friends very comfortable at your table. And also representing a lot of experiences in Dungeons and Demigods, because it was Europe. These players, these NPCs were coming from all around the world. The players themselves came up with a bunch of them. I had some that I was like, here's my laundry list. Who do you think you would hate or like? And it was important that I had characters from England, and I made sure that I had a girl who was Desi. She was originally Pakistani, because there is a huge population of Indian and Pakistani people in England. And it's just doing enough of your research that you're making positive representations, because I don't think you should play a character that is from a culture that is not your own. But when it comes to NPCs, as a DM, you're representing a realistic depiction of the world, so you should have diverse NPCs. That was a long-winded response.
It's great. I love it though. What a great tip, by the way. That's so extremely good and so extremely actionable as well. Like how simple is that for any DM out there to implement? Hey, bring a nice person into your game. Like it just feels like we don't think about that very often. So you said the good and the bad of NPCs. So tell me about the bad. What's the bad of NPCs?
The bad of NPCs, I think I've had NPCs in there when I've been like, I don't know how I'm going to get my players to like follow the plot. So I'm just going to have an NPC there the whole time who's going to tell them where to go. And that is not good. Sometimes NPCs are really good tools to be able to move the story along. They absolutely are, for beginner DMs, the easiest way to be able to do that. I think, and also NPCs that are just there for the sake of being there, always connected back to something, whether it's a player's backstory or they're meant to represent an idea or bring something different to the party. For example, I've been at tables where the whole party has been so sure about something, or there's been a great moral choice, and having an NPC come in and just very subtly put some doubt there and to kind of break the party apart a little bit is always juicy. But it's just don't make NPCs for yourself, make them for the party. Like, think about what NPCs are going to help bring these characters out of their shells and to move the story forward. Not even move the story forward, just have NPCs there that your players will want to have moments with and will help the characters themselves tell their stories.
You gave us one great tip already. Can you give us another? Do you have another hot tip, Maddie's NPCs?
In actual plays or in any circumstance, if you are bringing in a guest, have them play someone's backstory NPC. It hits every single time. They have a dead sister. You're bringing in a guest, guess what? They're the dead sister. Though I will say, always check with the guest to be like, hey, are you down with this? Or we can do something completely different. Because you do have to understand you're taking a little bit of the character creation process away from them. But every time I've asked someone, they've been like, the drama, yes, please. And immediately, you're very easily able to slot someone into a story. And also, immediately the players will give a shit violently.
Yeah, wow. Because if you're the DM and you show up as an NPC from a player's backstory, the players obviously connect massively. So the idea of that being a totally new person, my gosh, that's incredible. And it's obviously it's a surprise, right? When you do that.
Always.
Wow.
In Dungeons and Demigoods, I did it twice. Very fun.
That's very cool. I love that. I like to finish up with some recurring questions that I ask everybody. And today I've got a brand new one that I'm going to ask you for the very first time. But the first question isn't it. So first question, I want you to just take me back to your first ever character in your tabletop game. So tell me about that one that sold your party into slavery for a profit.
His name was Darkassin because it was one of the high elven names listed on like the Forgotten Realms page. We've all done that. He was a high elf sorcerer. I did not know that there was a difference between sorcerers and wizards at the time. He was neutral evil, and his backstory was that he was a noble who had all of this magic. And I'd done some research into Forgotten Realms lore because I'm crazy like that. And his parents sold him to the Wizards of Thay to like siphon the power out of him. And he was like, nah, and ran away. So now he's forced to be with the party so he can grow his power more and eventually get revenge on his family.
Wow. What a well-conceived character for your first time around. The last one I asked that to, the guy was like, oh, his name was Corker, and that's all there was.
Listen, I'd always been a writer, so I was just kind of like, but then I sat down at the table and I was like, this says ice knife. Does that mean I can freeze the lock and bang it off? And he was like, that's not what that spell is for, but yes, you can. And I was like, brilliant. Didn't know what a sorcery point was. Cannot recall ever thinking about that.
Question 2, what's your most controversial tabletop games opinion?
Wizards are the best class in D&D, and not even a little bit. Like, I think they're so significantly better than every other class, and I could debate for several hours about why I think they're the greatest class. Like, it's not even close to me. They're so good. I play so much D&D, I need variation, and I like that when I'm in combat, there's about 15 different things I could do as a wizard, and I have to strategize and think what I am going to do and in what order. Because the spell list is so long, you can basically do 15 different things. And if you think a wizard can go down in 2 actions, that sounds like a skill issue, buddy, and I need you to build that wizard better.
Oh, that's great. And then final question, when you think back to your time spent around the table over the years, do you have a favorite story or a favorite memory?
I'll do one stupid, really quick one and then my actual one. My stupid little quick one was then I saw a lot in Critical Role. We did it first. Okay, we didn't copy them. Was we had a really old character and it was the classic of, he should roll a con save every morning. And he was like, yeah, let me do it. Natural 1. I think we all like broke down. And I just remember like clawing at the table as I tried to breathe. And it was a beautiful moment. actual one.
So he died immediately.
Yeah, well, we then went, okay, JK, we went, JK, right? That was completely hypothetical because he just went, yeah, let's try it. First one, just natural one. It was beautiful. Actual one. In Dungeons and Demigods, I think I always say my favorite episode was, I believe it's episode 4, which I always feel bad saying because Justin wasn't there. He was away, which makes him think that my favorite episode was when he wasn't there. It's not. And I have a photo of my notes. It was an intro, and then I just wrote down role play and vibe, and that was my prep for that session. And it is my most favorite episode or session of Dungeons and Dragons I've ever played, because it was immediately after an extremely traumatic, harrowing event had occurred, and it was about the party talking to each other and reconciling with it. And very specifically, the thing with actual plays that you'll always have, which is unfortunate, but it happens, is occasionally there's some miscommunication, something goes wrong, you have the talks afterwards and you fix it. And what had happened is this traumatic event needed to happen quickly because I had a guest, which means everything moved very fast. And there was a player who was like, I really wanted to talk for them longer, and I feel like I'm a little bit, ugh. So I was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. And we had a dream sequence where she could have a full conversation with this character, and it also connected beautifully into the next arc. And I posted a clip of this moment, and it did very well. Ree was phenomenal. It was Ree talking to her father, who was Festus, the god of forges, and it was a completely improvised conversation. And it's some of the best D&D I've ever played, and I'm so proud of that moment because it was just gorgeous. I think my favorite line that I always remember is when they're about to leave, and she says, like, I will stay strong, I will come for you, Papa. And he says, remember, you are their foundation. Without you, they crumble. And she says, I will not falter. And I said, you will, but you'll grow and continue. Failure is what makes you who you are, and so much better than us, the gods. Ree was phenomenal. Check out that episode. It's
What's the episode again for
I think it
anyone
was
listening?
episode 4, I want to say, of Dungeons and Demigods.
Maddie, thanks so much for joining the show today. If there is anyone interested in finding out a little bit more about you, where can they find you?
You can always check me out I'm on TikTok is my main shindig. I'm on Instagram. I'm on X sometimes, but you'll find me on Twitch streaming with my friends. Newly to come, Chains of Asmodeus will be starting in early March. You can check out the casting announcement on my TikTok now. We got that out really quickly because we thought TikTok was going to die, but it was fine. Chains of Asmodeus being a level 11 to 20 module campaign about a bunch of characters descending into hell to find their souls. It is a really good module, one of the best. Love it so much. Otherwise, check me out and start playing if you want to be DM'd by me.
You can literally get a game DM'd by Maddie. How cool would that be?
Ah,
Thanks so much for joining me today.
thank you for having me.